I had the opportunity to listen to the Relief Society devotional last week, just recently. Picked up a couple of interesting things. I think it's worth talking about. Sister, what was her name? Sister Dennis, I think, Sister Dennis, a counselor in the General Relief Society presidency. She talked about priesthood power a lot, which we've heard many, many times. But then she made a statement which makes sense, and we've heard this from particularly President Oaks, about authority and power of the priesthood and all that. But she said that I tried to find a written version of these talks, and I haven't been able to find that yet. So I couldn't write fast enough as it appeared on YouTube. I know there's a way to print it out. I don't know. Anyway, it's okay. You guys will have watched this and probably comprehended it better than I did. But she said that women receive not only the power of the priesthood, but the authority, and she specified but the authority of the priesthood through different callings. And she quoted, I think it was President Oaks as well, who said, if it's not priesthood authority that you're operating in, then whose authority is it, or God's authority kind of thing. So, which makes sense. But then she made an interesting thing that endowed women that have received their endowment in the priesthood or in the temple, you have to listen carefully, but inferred or said that is authority, priesthood authority. So this opens up a whole different mindset that I have. I have a quote here from Sister Burton, President Burton, who is the General Relief Society president. I think this talk was 2013, 2014. And she gave a similar talk about priesthood authority. It's called Priesthood Power Available to All by Linda K. Burton. And this is given at Brigham Young University, May 2nd, 2013. Okay, you can get this on the church website. She made an interesting statement here in this talk. She said, there's a difference, however, between priesthood authority and priesthood power. Priesthood authority is conferred by ordination, but priesthood power is available to all. Since priesthood power is something we all desire to have in our families and homes, what do we need to do to invite the power into our lives? Personal righteousness is imperative to having priesthood power. So priesthood power, I don't think there's any question about that being available to all. Children, women, anybody, man, all ages, right? Priesthood power. But this priesthood authority is through ordination. And what was inferred by Sister Dennis was that women are ordained through the endowment, which is, it kind of makes sense, to be honest with you. I don't. This isn't something that I'm like, wow, what, but it seemed like there was a change there. She even, and you guys can listen to this, but she said, other religions have ordained, ministers, priests, reverends, or whatever, that are women. And she said, but it's unfortunate that the rest of the congregation, they don't get that same ordination. I thought that was big, because this opens up the door to ordinations of the priesthood in every aspect for men and women. Connor Boyack did a great video a week or so ago on his musings, Sunday musings. I highly recommend it. If I think of it, I'll put a link to that. And he talked about the roles of men and women and how it's the lines are really a lot blurry, a lot more blurry now than they used to be. More of the patriarchal order in the home, that the father is the head of the household and that kind of thing. And then the priesthood and priesthood ordinations all made more sense. And now they really don't make a whole lot of sense. If those lines are being blurred, then the line of priesthood and those responsibilities. And so here you have a general officer in the church saying that women have authority, priesthood authority, and just 2013 is we have Sister Burton saying that priesthood authority is conferred by ordination. So then we would say that in the temple, women are ordained, and so they do have priesthood authority. Now it's limited perhaps by what the prophet who holds all the keys he would limit that. Well, he limits it for everybody. We all trace our priesthood authority, if you will, through a line. Like I can trace mine to my father, and then from him to Sterling W. Seal, and then from him, I think it's Henry Blood, and from him, Joseph F. Smith. And then from him, I think it goes to Brigham Young. And then I think it's Joseph and Sidney Rigdon, maybe, that kind of co-did it. And then to Peter, James, and John, and then to Jesus Christ. So without that priesthood authority being passed on from Joseph, who had it, to Brigham, I can trace my priesthood authority right to Christ. Well, so can a woman that has gone in and received her endowment in the temple. There's an ordination there. So I guess what I'm saying is this opens up my mind to what would prevent that. If roles are pretty blurred, like it's no longer really preached that men are the breadwinner and the protector, and women are, their main duty is to nurture and raise children and bear children and all that. If that's not the thing, which I like, again, I'll refer to Connor Boyack because he's got some awesome videos of talks in the past, and then in the way past, let's say, latter day, but 60s, 70s, 1960s, 1970s, and then talks later that it's like we're equally yoked. Well, when we say equally yoked, then our image goes to two oxen that has the same yoke over both of them, and both of them are doing the exact same thing. Plowing a field or doing whatever. They're like, one is not in charge of the other. They're equal. They have the same yoke or the same responsibility. A yoke could be responsibility. So we have several talks where a husband and wife are equally yoked. Now, equal in the sense of importance to the Lord is a no-brainer, but equal in responsibilities is a different ballgame. And I think from this talk by Sister Dennis, it really opened the possibility for anything happening, you know. So we could definitely, I think, see priesthood leadership. What would prevent a woman being a priesthood leader? The only limit would be if the prophet said no, because he holds all the keys. But if he said yes, then there's, scripturally, I think we have a difficult time seeing that. We have the words of Paul, who you know, even says that women, you know, really shouldn't even be speaking in church. And we had, when we were going through the New Testament, you can check out the student manual. I'm just going off my memory, but they inferred that those were policies, not doctrine. So they were already like stepping back in the manual, stepping back from Paul and his preaching about those kind of things, authority, who's in charge of a meeting, who's the head of the house, you know, that kind of thing. So interesting stuff. The other one that was really fascinating to me was Sister Yi, and saying, us women, we are the 10 virgins. I was like, wow. So at first I was like, good for her. She's saying only half of you guys are going to actually make it to the wedding. And but then the way she said it, it was almost like a compliment to all 10 virgins. So listen to that and let me know in the comments what you all think of how she said that. Hey, we're the 10 virgins, like, yay, you know, not like, you know, let's make sure we're the 5 wise and not the 5 foolish, right? So this gets into an interesting conversation about that parable. Is it gender specific? So these are interesting things, because in the handbook, a transgendered person who might have transitioned all the way can still be baptized. And the explanation is, into the church, the explanation is that person or that ordinance is not gender specific. So you can be whatever and be baptized, because it's not. But the following ordinances are gender specific, so they can't go any further. I'll tell you, sometimes my head spins. It seemed like, to me, not that many years ago, everything was just so simple in my head. I'm sure other people were way more advanced than I am now, and was definitely back then. And so they were struggling with the complexities of things, but it doesn't seem as cut and dried, both with, you know, my previous comments about priesthood authority for everybody and priesthood leadership for everybody. But now this gender dysphoria and how that is perceived and thought of, that gender is specific for later ordinances, but not the gateway ordinance, not to enter into God's kingdom. You don't have to be a specific gender, which is interesting to me, but that's the way it is right now. So then that made me think of the parable of the 10 virgins. Is the 10 virgins specific for women? Now, we have lots of quotes. Joseph Smith, we have Spencer W. Kimball really solidified it, that the parable of the 10 virgins represents members of the church. If you expand that to outside of the church, most Christians believe that it represents all Christians, believers in Christ, that half, right? So it's a 50-50 deal. Half of them are prepared with the extra oil and half of them aren't. But But the way Sister Yi, is it? Yeah, Sister Yi spoke of it. It's like, hey, us sisters, we're all part of we're the 10 virgins. We're it. It kind of made you wonder. Now, in Matthew 24, it talks about 2 in the field, right? And 1 will be taken. And then 2 at the, I had that. And 2 women grinding. And it says it's specifically 2 women. The other verse doesn't say whether it's men or women. So it got me thinking, is because that's kind of a parable of the 10 virgins too, because 1 will be ready and 1 won't be. And so it's it's the 50-50. And at least 1, it's specific to women, which I think is interesting, one of those verses. Now, there's a lot to talk about with these different parables that come up, but the Bruce R. McConkie, he said there's 2 ways to look at this. 1 taken up. It could be the good person or the bad person. Because if you're raptured, you think, hey, I'm taken, I'm quickened. But you're also thinking that if you are raptured, it's immediate and you're here, you stay here. Or if you're quickened and you're a terrestrial being living through the millennium, and who gets burned. And that's another way to think of being taken, is you're burned, you're eliminated. And so you could look at, it doesn't really specify in Matthew 25 whether, who's the good or the bad, right? But the parable of the 10 virgins is the wedding. So here's the big question with this. And I've done a video on this before, but here's how dumb I am. I can't remember and I couldn't find the video right easily, but at the parable of the 10 virgins, we know that Christ is the groom and that the 10 virgins are the bridesmaids. According to Jewish tradition of weddings. Well, who's the bride? Who is the bride? Who's the bride? In Revelation, the bride, it represents the church. But if the virgins represent the members of the church, what is now Sue had an idea on this. Sister P said, well, maybe the bride is us as individuals that are worthy and we are sealed to Christ. I like that. I like that. And then collectively as a church, as an organization, let's say, or even expand it to all Christians, however you want to look at it, half of them will they're all invited to the wedding. They all have an invitation. So half of them will actually have their wicks trimmed, oil in their lamp, and extra oil in their vessels. And so that's required to get into the wedding. And then the door is shut. And those that are out getting extra oil won't be let in. So that would represent the bulk or the membership, the whole membership. But the actual wedding is between Christ and individuals being sealed to him in a sense. Now, look, to be honest, I still wonder who the bride is. You can go on Google search, check, kind of things, and you just don't get much. Now, you could say, well, maybe the 5 virgins are actually the bride. But that doesn't make any sense either. Even though they're coming out to meet him, that's in preparation to introduce them to the bride. And they have an invitation to the wedding. If you're the bride, you don't need an invitation. So, I mean, you're it, right? You don't invite yourself. If you're getting married and you're the bride or the groom, typically you don't send an invitation to yourself and say, hey, great, I'm invited. So that doesn't make sense to me either. I would really like to know your thoughts of who the bride is in the parable of the 10 virgins. We have a groom, we have bridesmaids or torchbearers or, whatever you want to call them. And pretty strong evidence that that's the membership of the church or the kingdom of God. And a good representation that only half will be ready. There's a lot of statistics that show that that's probably true, and one of them is sacrament meeting attendance. It's about a 50%, sacrament meeting attendance throughout the world. So that's another thing to be to consider. But just if you can go on YouTube and find those talks and find Sister Yi speaking of, hey, we're the women, we're the 10 virgins, almost excited, not separating the two. I thought it just stood out to me, right? It could have been a slip, but I don't think so. I think she was pointing out the fact that, yeah, we are part of the 10 virgins. And half of us are going to screw up and not be prepared. We're going to be doing things of the world. That's, so that's one thing I wanted to point out. The last thing was, and I didn't actually re-look at this, so I'm going by memory, but I'm pretty sure that President Nelson did the wrap up on the meeting, and he said that women are better or more effective or something like that in gathering scattered Israel than men. What the heck does that mean? If they are, and yet we're always told that young men, it's a duty, responsibility to serve a full-time mission, and young women, it's a choice. If they're better at it, do we see in the future that's not going to be a choice? It's always a choice, right? I get that. It's always a choice, but is it going to be a duty, a priesthood duty to go on a mission even as a young person? Kind of like the IDF, where it doesn't matter if you're male or female, you serve. And about the same age and about the same time period that you're required to serve is pretty cool. I could foresee something like that happening and not be bothered by it, not be like blown away. I could see the thought process of ordination and women having a priesthood authority and being ordained. I could see things changing that way in the church as far as leadership. And I would probably go, well, why not? I don't know. I'm not, God didn't give, it doesn't appear that there's priesthood only with Abraham, not wives of Abraham. But I don't know. I don't know. And then Isaac and then Jacob on down. Because we have that Abrahamic covenant of priesthood, posterity, certainly the woman would be involved, and property, the woman would be involved. So probably priesthood as well. If the other two would involve the women, for sure, and they're part of the covenant, then priesthood would be part of that, and the ordination. And the authority, which comes from ordination, which also is the root of ordinances. So there's a great talk. I don't know if I probably can't find it right now, but it was by Boyd K. Packer. I'll look it up again, but he talked about, an ordinance connects us with God, and ordination is the authority to do that. ordinance. And it sounds like to me that women have that, especially in the temple. Now, you could say, well, that's only initiatory, but is it? I'm just asking questions, you know. We know that baptism is gender neutral. Now, one thing I'm not going to get into that because it's temple stuff, but anyway, I think that's it. I think that's it for this video. So I wanted to bring up one last thing because I'm only 25 minutes into this. Is the Davidic servant. Total off topic, different thing, but I had quite a lengthy discussion with somebody that's all about the Davidic servant being somebody other than Christ. And I've studied this. I know that Abram Gileadi is really into this, the Davidic servant, the last days servant, and that he'll be David. We have quotes from Joseph Smith, but they're secondhand, but they are in the teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith by Joseph Fielding Smith. So we have to, take a look at that. But this ties in so much with root and branch, the Lion of Judah, all these different names, the stem of Jesse, stem, root, branch. It's Christ. It's Christ. The Davidic servant is Christ. To think that there's, and this is just my opinion, but I feel so good about it, that we're not looking for some other person that's going to come and lead the church, that's name is David, and it's not going to happen, in my opinion. Now, there's a couple of interesting things I think that we should consider, and that is the big picture is, or the umbrella is Christ as the Davidic servant. But another view of that is that Israel is the Davidic servant, the whole house of Israel, and the Abrahamic covenant that came through Israel. And here's why. Quite often you can take what Israel went through and go, well, that's really similar to what Christ went through. He's a famous Jewish rabbi, Rashi. I think he was around 1000 AD or 1100 AD, something like that. And a lot of rabbinic and Jewish interpretation of the Torah comes through him. He was brilliant. And, we take Isaiah 53 and just go, no brainer, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. I mean, we have the nails in the hands, we have the suffering, we have the redemption and forgiveness, we have all this. It's so plain, and it is. Well, his interpretation was referring to Israel being scarred, being beaten, being destroyed, and then coming back and being resurrected, in a sense, being resurrected, which Israel has been and will be as a people resurrected, come back to life. Language preserved, people preserved, a nation preserved. And we're seeing that happen right before our eyes. So in a sense, that is true, in a sense. So it's kind of like you can't take Christ out of Israel, and you can't take Israel out of Christ. So in a sense, the Davidic servant is both. Where do we get the covenant through? Who's our servant? Israel, the house of Israel. That's without them, without that, we have nothing. Without Jesus, we have nothing. So you can kind of see how the Davidic servant can be both the house of Israel and Jesus Christ, but ultimately it's Christ, right? It is. He is the Davidic servant. And I think it's very dangerous to think that some leader, a man, the arm of the flesh, is going to pop out and lead us into the promised land at the last day. I just don't. Christ is the one I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a man. You know, it's just, I think it's, I just think it's wrong. But that's just me, you know. But I thought I would address it and kind of give my, you know, reasons why. There's a whole list of scriptures we could go through that describe the last day servant or the Davidic servant. And really, it doesn't even say Davidic much, but that's what it's inferring. But David was the king of Israel. And who could redeem David? Who's the only one that could redeem him? Christ. Christ is the Davidic servant. He's the servant of David. He serves David. Just take that phrase, Davidic servant, and go with it. Christ is the master of all and the servant of all. So that's how I look at it. If you have a really strong opinion about the Davidic servant and want to express it on here, I'll totally, you know, leave it there, even if it's totally against what I have to say. But I don't think it does anybody any good to think that, hey, maybe I'm the guy, maybe I'm the Davidic servant, or hey, so-and-so could be, or somebody's going to come up, and until that happens, I'm not really going to pay attention to anything. Yeah. I think it's looking beyond the mark. You know, I think it's Christ. Feel very strong about that. So, okay, I think that's all for this video. These are sometimes just ramblings and things that come into my mind, but your thoughts on ordination and those talks specifically, and the parable of the 10 virgins, and Sister Yee's comment about you women, us women, we're the 10 virgins, you know, like she was excited, not making a difference between the 5 foolish and the 5 wise. But anyway, comments about that. And then, yeah, I think that's it. Okay, God bless. Talk to you soon. Bye.